Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 13.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
Hi there, it is Adam Franklin from the Web Marketing That Works podcast, joined by my friend and co-host, Toby Jenkins. How are you, Toby?
Good, Ads. How are you?
Very well, thank you. This is the show for people like you and like me that love marketing on the web. You will be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments where we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works.
This show is brought to you by our new book, Web Marketing That Works, and specifically the bonus 33 free templates that go with it. So thanks for your support of the book so far, and if you'd like to download those templates, please jump over to our website, bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so today's episode, Ads, I'm really excited to share with everyone, which is email marketing, which has been a real passion of yours, I know, and you have dedicated a lot of time to it, and there's some great stories over the years too. So do you want to take us back to the early days and why you've always been attracted to email marketing?
Yeah, thanks, Tobe. Well, even before we started Bluewire, you'll remember the days where I was doing some promotions for Rosie's nightclub, and which later was called Bar, and several other nightclubs in Brisbane for that matter. And one of the things I enjoyed doing back then was actually just emailing my friends as to what was going on at the nightclubs. And by the time we started Bluewire Media, there was social media didn't exist because we started our business in 2005 before social media as we know it now existed. And so when we were looking to market our business, there were very few options, and email marketing was one that I had particularly enjoyed in the nightclub days, and so that was a logical place to start with Bluewire Media. And even as we kicked off the Bluewire news, actually, we had, I think, 3 clients under our belt, and we were really looking for ways to, 1, add value to our clients that we just won, and 2, promote our business and share our expertise with our growing database. And so one of the ideas behind it was actually wanting to promote or provide an offer to our subscribers from the actual clients that we'd won. And whilst that didn't necessarily work tremendously successfully, it did kick off our email marketing efforts.
Yeah, and I think the other point, which I think, again, we've made in an earlier episode, was that our network was where we were getting the vast majority of our business, so it just made sense to be keeping in touch with the network that was referring us the business, right?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, our very first attempt at email marketing didn't quite go as smoothly as we'd hoped. I recall it vividly, and I'd written the very first Bluewire news, and we'd got it designed and developed, and I was proofreading it, and I checked it twice, 3 times, 4 times, and I was nervous as hell because emailing everybody that you knew on our database about a business that we just started was very confronting and quite terrifying. And we had about 600 or 700 people on our database, and it was a Saturday morning in Brisbane, and I had quadruple checked the email, took a big deep breath, and hit send. And I waited in my chair for the email to arrive in my inbox, and it arrived in my inbox saying, "Dear Adam." And that's when I realized I'd actually sent "Dear Adam" out to all 700 people on the database. It was an awful feeling. It was okay for the 3 people on the database called Adam, but it wasn't such a good look for all the others, particularly when we were proclaiming to be a web design company. So it caused a bit of a panic attack, and then I realized after 5 minutes I've got to swallow my pride, admit my mistake, and resend that email out to everybody, but of course acknowledge my mistake and call them by their proper name. And so that was our very first foray into email marketing. And, I could have easily prevented that mistake happening if I just flicked it across to you, Tobes, to proofread, because you would have obviously noticed that it said Dear Adam as opposed to Dear Toby. And I think, making those mistakes early on could have easily scared us off email marketing, but I'm very pleased that we admitted our mistake and moved on.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's been an email since that hasn't been sent to someone to double check ads. So I think the lesson was learned very publicly. So I think you've handled that one really nicely, actually. And obviously, our email marketing has evolved enormously since those early days. So do you want to walk us through sort of the progression over the next little while?
Yeah, sure. So after that first shocker, I learnt my lesson and obviously got you to proofread them all, Tobes. But since then, in the early days, we were doing monthly emails, ideally. Sometimes, in a startup business, other areas of the business take priority, and we didn't do it every single month, although we did try to. But we were doing monthly newsletters from about 2006 through to 2012. We sold tickets to events. We sold digital products via email. So we became very comfortable with the idea that email marketing was a very powerful tool for actually driving sales and revenue. And I guess looking back, one of the pieces of advice I would sort of like to share is that, don't be afraid to start providing offers or selling products through your email marketing. You don't need to wait forever to do that. And the right people will appreciate that and will actually take you up on your offer as well. So do try and introduce sales, as soon as you're comfortable. But, the first time you do it is always a terrifying thought because, you could be rejected or you think people might actually unsubscribe if you do start selling stuff. But I've found that it is a very valuable component to email marketing.
Just a point on that, which is sort of the flip side of that too, is, like what do you suggest being the sort of ratio between sales emails versus trying to add value emails?
Yeah, good call. Yes, I think you earn the right to actually ask for a sale and provide an offer if you have actually delivered value on a consistent basis. And my rule of thumb would be, every 9 emails deliver value, and then on the 10th maybe ask for a sale. Like it might be an event that you're running or a digital product, the 2 examples of what we've done. But yeah, I'd say 9 times out of 10 be delivering value for free through the email, and you earn the right on that 10th email, I think, to ask for a commercial transaction.
Yeah, cool. And certainly there've been some sticky points as well with our email marketing. What have been some of the things that you feel have really sort of freed you up to do it much better? Yeah,
well, I think one thing worth noting is there's always content. There's no shortage of content to be emailing to people. The bottleneck for me and for us over the years has been actually having resources and developers to actually help actually get the email out the door. The best thing that we did was to get a robust email template that meant that we weren't dependent on web developers to do it. And so once this happened, I was able to create and write and test and send an email all on my own without requiring an HTML web programmer to help me. And what this meant was that we could go from monthly emails up to weekly emails. And that was, again, something that I was a little bit nervous about because I thought, is weekly going to be too much for people? But it was interesting because when we went to that inbound conference in 2012, we saw Dan Zarella, who is also known as the social media scientist, and he gave a presentation that we attended, and he said, really, doing monthly emails is too infrequent. People will actually forget about you unless you're emailing them, at least once a week, and he even says you can experiment with going even more frequently than that. He said people won't unsubscribe, and in fact, they will begin to get to know you a lot better because you're providing value on a more frequent basis. So we actually did increase our frequency to once a week, and it was great because unsubscribes didn't increase. The open rates were a tiny bit lower, but the fact was that we were communicating with people week in, week out, and we got to form a much closer relationship with our readers.
Yeah, I always find that really interesting that it doesn't affect your unsubscribe rates particularly, and I guess that also means that perhaps people are a bit more selective around what headlines they open and which emails they open. But which is probably a great way to lead into the next point, which is what kind of stuff does get the highest click-throughs in terms of subject lines and open rates and click-through rates and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure, Tobe. So yeah, we've been running email marketing experiments particularly for quite some time now. And some of the major discoveries for me have been, well, firstly, we did a test. We originally sent our Bluewire newsletters from Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins, which is obviously our names. And in the early days, that outperformed sending it from Bluewire Media. It outperformed it quite significantly. And the reason for that is because, a lot of people knew us personally and the business was very new. So not many people were familiar with our company name. However, when I did that same experiment in 2013, it was quite a shock because the Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins didn't get a very good open rate at all compared to having it come from Bluewire Media.
People didn't like us anymore.
No, it felt that way. It was a really big shock for the ego, but I actually tested it 2 more times just to check that the data was correct, and it was correct. It was overwhelmingly in favor of sending it from Bluewire Media as opposed to from both of our names. And if we look at that, ego aside, it makes sense because more people were familiar with Bluewire Media, our company, than that knew us individually. And because a lot of people had downloaded our templates and were familiar with our tools and whatnot, it made sense to then make all of our newsletters come from Bluewire Media. One of the next experiments, I guess, that we ran was comparing Bluewire Media as a from name to just one of our names. So say for Toby Jenkins. And I ran that experiment, so Bluewire Media as a from name versus Toby Jenkins. And in actual fact, on that occasion, the Toby Jenkins from name outperformed Bluewire. And one of the reasons for that is that it's from a person, and personalized emails naturally come across as being personal and written by that individual. One of the downsides, though, was that occasionally people would actually open it thinking that it was a individually written email from, say, Toby or myself, and sometimes take a little bit of offense that, once they realized that it was a bulk sent email. And so we personally made the choice then to ease back on the emails from either Adam or from Toby. And if we were going to do that, we made sure that we indicated in the subject line or in the from name that it was actually a work-related or a Bluewire-related topic. So we would either put something about Bluewire in the subject line, or we would put, say, Toby Jenkins Bluewire Media as the from name, so that it was very clear to the recipient that yes, it was an email written by Toby, but it was also sent to our subscribers and not just individually written to a particular person.
Yeah, I think setting the expectation that way as well helps. People will adjust when their expectations are, when they understand why certain emails are being sent as they are, which is my next question to you, Ads, which is the debate between HTML versus text only, and when should you use a great looking designed template versus because you see a heap of emails just sent just as text as well. So what's your sort of philosophy in striking the balance there too?
Great question. So we typically send our Bluewire news as HTML emails, and what that means is that it's visual, it's got pictures and color and looks pretty, and text only refers to literally just being text, black and white text in an email, just like it would if it came from Gmail or whatever your email provider is. And we did the experiment. We did send a Bluewire news as a text only version, and in that situation, the open rates were actually much the same. because, well, the subject and the from name were very similar. It was literally just the body of the email that was text. And in that situation, the feedback on the Bluewire News was that, people actually liked the pretty pictures better. And so we stuck with the pretty pictures and the HTML for our Bluewire News emails. But when we actually tested that against sending a email from an individual, either myself or from you, Tobes, when we actually did it from an email from an individual, it worked way better doing it as a text only, because that way it is an email exactly how it would appear if you'd written it one-on-one. And so having it from an individual in text only, in my experience, works best. And if it's from a company, then the HTML, the pretty pictures, works better. And I think one of the other reasons for that is because if it's a company correspondence, it's typically, the readers are more expecting a newsletter format, and therefore the HTML works. Whereas if it's from an individual, then they're expecting it to be much more like a normal Gmail email, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing for me is sort of how do you sort of frame the content then in terms of what goes into the beautiful design versus what goes into the text only, or that Gmail style email?
Yeah, well, for the Bluewire newsletters, it's much more of a sample of, say, 6 to 10 different pieces of content that we've written or released or that we're sharing with our readers, and people can just get an overview of what's happened in the week, and then they can then click through to access a template or click through to access a podcast or a blog article. Whereas if we are writing text-only emails from an individual, then typically they are about a specific topic. So it might be a call to action style email where we're inviting people to sign up for one of our online courses, or we're asking somebody to consider coming along to one of our events. So the text-only emails are typically sales-related emails with a call to action and an offer, and they work particularly well because I think, most people are comfortable with doing business and transacting through email, and typically when you think about it, most commercial emails are text only and they come from an individual, and they're quite clear and direct as to say, if you wish to proceed with this proposal, hit reply and approve it. And so people are quite comfortable with that format, whereas very rarely do you get, commercial emails from somebody that are HTML and all colorful and pretty. So I think that's the difference. With HTML, colorful ones, you want to be delivering great information and doing those value add, so like 9 times out of 10. And then when it does come time for a commercial offer, if it comes from an individual and it's text only, that works because people are most comfortable with that format of email.
Yeah, that makes a heap of sense to me. I mean, certainly that's how we deliver proposals and that kind of thing as well. And that's what people are, and that's how I receive proposals, is in that sort of business framework style of email. So it does make a heap of sense, I think, compared to the fully designed template.
And just one other final point on that.
Sure.
With the regular Bluewire News emails, it's very useful to own a time, so to speak. Like we typically send ours at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, and we do that week in, week out, ideally. And so our readers get in the habit of expecting our Bluewire News at that particular time. And then the beauty of doing the text-only sales offer type emails is to do that at a different time, on a different day, and it's coming from an individual, not Bluewire, and it's text-only, not HTML. So it really breaks that rhythm, and it makes people sort of sit up and pay attention because we're breaking that rhythm, that there's something different to say, something different to offer, and it does typically get a even higher open rate because I think it's breaking that pattern.
Okay, Ad, so we've spoken about sort of open rates and, the purpose of design versus text-only emails and that kind of thing. How about, what are some insights around click-through rates and getting the best click-through rates?
What I've found in terms of click-through rates, Tobes, is that for us, the templates and tools that we release have had phenomenal click-through rates. And I'm talking anywhere between 26 to 66% click-through rate. And that doesn't matter if it's on an HTML designed email or if it's a text-only email. That click-through rate is very, very high. And so naturally, that has influenced the type of content that we put on our newsletter. In second place, ebooks have had a 10% to 33% click-through rate on emails, and feature blog posts have a 5 to 14% click-through rate. So there are top 3 pieces of content that have the highest click-through rate. The recurring theme amongst these top 3 pieces of content with the highest click-through rate is that they are actually all very high quality content, and I think the golden rule for what you put on your email newsletters is to be useful. If you look at templates, which have been, as you say, a winner for us, they are very practical and very useful. Ebooks are very content rich and have a lot of good quality information in them, and as well the featured blog posts that we've written. So they're all pieces of content that have had a lot of time and effort and good quality information put in them. So if you can be useful, that would be my number one tip for information that you put on your newsletter.
Well, while we're on tips, have you got any others in terms of someone either getting started or I think the advanced people will probably have picked up a few bits and pieces there, hopefully. So any other tips for email marketers out there?
Look, I think firstly get started. Even if you've got 2 people on your list, that's great because that's 2 people who can then share your message, 2 people who might become your customers. So do just start because your list will grow over time. Even if you're worried about not being able to create enough content of your own, look, you don't need to start by creating your own. You can start by curating content from the web and just pulling together the best handful of articles and then sharing that with your audience. So you don't need to be burdening yourself with this, sense that you've got to create all this content every single week. Just simply share other people's best stuff. And finally, as I've said throughout the show, get an email template. That means that you're independent from web developers because you often get your best inspiration, say after work or before work or outside of business hours. So you don't want to be then hamstrung by waiting for a web developer to be able to develop it and send it for you. You really want to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So just to summarize those quickly, A, get started. B, curate content if you don't have the time to actually do it yourself. And C, use text emails or make sure that you're independent of a designer and a developer when you're getting started, as soon as possible anyway.
Absolutely.
Cool. Oh, well, thanks very much, Ads. That's been a really interesting show. This show was brought to you, as always, by Web Marketing That Works, the book, and specifically the bonus 33 free templates that go with it. Check them out at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. There are a number of email marketing templates in there. The intent of the podcast is always to deliver actionable advice, so hopefully you got some from this episode, and your feedback and questions are welcome. So please let us know via email or Twitter. My email is toby.jenkins@bluewiremedia.com.au, or on Twitter, I am at Toby_Jenkins. Ads?
I'm adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au or Franklin_Adam on Twitter. If you enjoyed today's show, we would love it if you left us an honest review and a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, and we will give a shout out to the listeners that leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much, and we will both see you next time.
Look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.